PTE HELP, Test 9, Listening Fill in the Blanks. While in high school, Wilbur intended to go to Yale and study to be a clergyman. However, he suffered a facial injury while playing hockey, which prevented him from continuing his education. For the next 3 years he continued his education informally through reading in his father's large library. In their early years the two boys helped their father, who edited a journal called The Religious Telescope. Later, they began a paper of their own, West Side News. They went into business together as printers, producing everything from religious handouts to commercial flyers. In 1892 they opened the Wright Cycle Shop in Dayton. This was the perfect occupation for the Wright brothers because it involved one of the exciting mechanical devices of the time, the bicycle. When the brothers took up the problems of flight, they had a solid grounding in practical mechanics.
PTE HELP, Test 9, Listening Fill in the Blanks. Landslides depend only on gravitational forces, and thus, occur on all celestial bodies with surface relief. Aside from the Earth, they have been identified in our solar system on the terrestrial planets Mercury, Venus, and Mars, on the Martian moons, and the asteroids of 433 Eros. However, landslides are by far most common on active terrestrial planets, of which there is only one in our solar system, Earth. Convection in the Earth's mantle moves continents and deforms the crust, elevating and deforming crustal rocks that fail under the influence of gravity. Volcanic activity, earthquakes, weathering, and erosion are ancillary processes that promote instability on our planet. Relief also exists on the Earth's ocean floor, notably at the drowned edges of continents and in ocean trenches. Thus, mass movements are also common at these sites.
PTE HELP, Test 9, Listening Fill in the Blanks. The Wrights took up the problem of flight at a favorable time, for some of the fundamental, or basic, theories of aerodynamics were already known, a body of experimental data existed, and, most importantly, the recent development of the internal combustion engine made available a sufficient source of power for manned flight. The Wright brothers began by accumulating and mastering all the important information on the subject, designed and tested their own models and gliders, built their own engine, and when the experimental data they had inherited appeared to be inadequate or wrong, they conducted new and more thorough experiments. The Wrights decided that earlier attempts at flight were not successful because the plans for early airplanes required pilots to shift the bodies to control the plane. The brothers decided that it would be better to control a plane by moving its wings. PTE HELP, Test 9, Listening Fill in the Blanks. William Gilbert was a famous researcher in magnetism. He was famous during the time of Queen Elizabeth and is best known for his publication. Credited as one of the originators of the term of electricity, William Gilbert is also known as the father of electricity, magnetism and electrical engineering. He traveled extensively and wrote many during his lifetime. Apart from being a scientist, Gilbert led a parallel career as an astronomer. He studied the moon's surface without a telescope and concluded that the craters were in fact land, and the white patches on the moon's surface were water bodies. One of his other significant contributions was when he pointed out that the motion of the skies occurred due to the rotation of the Earth. One of the first people to try to map the markings of the moon's surface, Gilbert was a celebrated astronomer and scientist. His theories on magnetism and electricity had also been the subject of controversy for many of his successors.
PTE HELP, Test 9, Listening Fill in the Blanks. The Wright brothers proceeded to fly double-winged kites and gliders in order to gain experience and to test the data they had. After consulting the U.S. Weather Bureau, they chose an area of sand dunes near the small town of Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, as the site of their experiments. In September 1900 they set up camp there. The Wrights' first device failed to fly as a kite because it was unable to develop sufficient lift. Instead, they flew it as a free glider. They kept careful records of their failures as well as of their successes. Their own data showed conclusively that previous tables of information they had were greatly inaccurate. Returning to Dayton in 1901, the Wright brothers built a wind tunnel, the first in the United States. This is where they tested over 200 models of wing surfaces in order to measure lift and drag factors and to discover the most suitable design. They also discovered that all the screw propellers had been used on ships for more than half a century. There was no reliable body of data on the subject and no theory that would allow them to design the proper propellers for their airship. They had to work the problem out for themselves mathematically. PTE HELP, Test 9, Listening Fill in the Blanks. Research about the celestial bodies in our solar system has recently been greatly advanced by data from many spacecraft, and very interesting results have been obtained. The amount of information about the Moon, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, as well as dwarf planet Pluto, has increased significantly, correcting older theories. Similarly, knowledge about moons and satellites has increased drastically. In particular, the discovery of liquid water on various moons such as Europa, Ganymede, Callisto, and Titan is very interesting, because it means that life could be found on these satellites. Movements of ice were also found on the giant moons of Jupiter and Saturn and on Pluto. In this chapter, the scientific results for each celestial body are presented and the possibility of life is discussed. PTE HELP, Test 9, Listening Fill in the Blanks. The study of the motion of celestial bodies within our solar system has played a key role in the broader development of classical mechanics. In 1687, Isaac Newton presented a unified theory of the motion of bodies in the heavens and on the earth. Newtonian physics has proven to provide a remarkably good description of a multitude of phenomena on a wide range of length scales. Many of the mathematical tools developed over the centuries to analyze planetary motions in the Newtonian framework have found applications for terrestrial phenomena. The concept of deterministic chaos, now known to play a major role in weather patterns on the Earth, was first conceived in connection with planetary motions. Deviations of the orbit of Uranus from that predicted by Newton's laws led to the discovery of the planet Neptune. In contrast, the first major success of Einstein's general theory of relativity was to explain deviations of Mercury's orbit that could not be accounted for by Newtonian physics. But general relativistic corrections to planetary motions are quite small, so this article concentrates on the rich and varied effects of Newtonian gravitation, together with briefer descriptions of non-gravitational forces that affect the motions of some objects in the solar system.
PTE HELP, Test 9, Listening Fill in the blanks. The rural economy retained much of the characteristics of the late Qing. While markets had been forming since the Song and Ming dynasties, Chinese agriculture by the Republic of China was almost completely geared towards producing cash crops for foreign consumption, and was thus subject to the say of the international markets. Key exports included glue, tea, silk, sugar cane, tobacco, cotton, corn and peanuts. The rural economy was hit hard by the Great Depression of the 1930s, in which an overproduction of agricultural goods led to massive falling prices for China as well as an increase in foreign imports, as agricultural goods produced in Western countries were dumped in China. In 1931, imports of rice in China amounted to 21 million bushels compared with 12 million in 1928. Other goods saw even more staggering increases. In 1932, 15 million bushels of grain were imported compared with 900,000 in 1928. This increased competition led to a massive decline in Chinese agricultural prices, which were cheaper and thus the income of rural farmers. In 1932, agricultural prices were 41% of 1921 levels. Rural incomes had fallen to 57% of 1931 levels by 1934 in some areas. PTE HELP, Test 9, Listening Fill in the blanks. Following the war with Japan, Chiang acquired Taiwan from Japan and renewed his struggle with the communists. However, the corruption of the KMT, as well as hyperinflation as a result of trying to fight the Civil War, resulted in mass unrest throughout the republic and sympathy for the communists. In addition, the communists' promise to redistribute land gained them support among the massive rural population. In 1949, the communists captured Beijing and later Nanjing as well. The People's Republic of China was proclaimed on October 1, 1949. The Republic of China relocated to Taiwan where Japan had laid an educational groundwork. Taiwan continued to prosper under the Republic of China government and came to be known as one of the four Asian tigers due to its economic miracle, and later became one of the largest sources of investment in mainland China after the PRC economy began its rapid growth following Deng's reforms.